Now it's time to move on to another bar chord position. And this is the other main position that you're going to be using bar chords with, and that's your A chord. Now you all know your A chord that starts like this, down in the open strings. Now if you want to move this up, just like the E chord, you're going to have to use a bar, and this is a little bit more of a stretch, but it's also very important to know this. So once again, let's go up to the higher frets where they're a little bit closer together and maybe not so much of a stretch. Let's go up to the 7th fret and try that. Now you're going to get your 3 fingers, your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th fingers, all nicely placed in a row there on one fret, and then not on the fret just next to it, but there's a fret between where you put your bar. And again, remember to keep your wrist nice and curved, your first finger nice and straight, thumb in the back giving you a lot of nice support. Again, if you crunch up your hand like this, you're going to really have a problem. Let's look at your regular A chord again. Go down to the first position. That's your A chord at your 2nd fret. And you see if you move up 1 fret, there is that open fret that you've got to compensate for, so your finger's going to go. And again, as you get higher up, it gets a little easier because the frets get closer together. And also you don't have the resistance of the nut down here, which really makes it a little harder when you're playing down on the lower frets. Now there's another way of playing this bar chord. Let's take a look at this again. Now I'm up at the 5th fret and holding this down. Now I find it easier, and a lot of other people do also, instead of using 3 fingers to play these 3 strings, to just use 1 finger, and I use my ring finger and kind of mash it down. Now here I have to bend this joint. If you can see that, it's kind of at an angle here. And the reason I'm mashing that down and bending that joint is so I can get this open first string, or the first string where this bar is playing it, to ring out. Otherwise that's going to muffle that. So see the way that's... Well, do it whichever way is easier for you. You might want to start out by doing it with all 4 fingers and then gradually practice it this other way. And I think eventually this may become easier for you than this way. I know it is for me. Now, if you remember when we were playing in the E position, we said that the 6th string is the string that's the root of the E chord. And so we found the others by going up F sharp, G, G sharp, A, naming the chord in the E position bar for the 6th string. Well, when you're on the A, your root note is your A string. So you're going to name your chords now for what notes are on the A string. So if this is A sharp or B flat, B, C, remember there's no B sharp, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, and so forth. So once again, when you're playing in this A position and you're playing in bar positions, you should memorize certain places. For instance, the 5th fret is a D. So remember that the 5th fret on the 5th string is a D. The 7th fret is an E. The 8th fret is an F. So the way you can find your way around is by the notes of the 5th string. If you know this is a D, then going 2 frets down brings you to a C. So it's easy to remember if you know that the D is at the 5th fret, C is at the 3rd fret, again D is at the 5th fret, E is at the 7th fret, F is at the 8th fret, and so forth. Now going back to our regular E chord, you know that there's a really strong relationship between your E chord and your A chord. If you've played a lot of songs, you'll know that E, let's say, is the 1 chord, and when it goes to an A, you're going to a 4 chord, or the subdominant chord. Sometimes there'll be an E7th leading you into the A, right? You all know that sound, right? Lots of songs have it. Well, if that's the relationship down there with your E and A in the open position, it's going to have the same relationship when you're playing a bar chord. For instance, if you're playing your E at the 3rd fret, which is a G chord, of course I mean E position with the bar, then if you go to your A position, you're going to have the 4 chord in the key of G. You might want to do it like this. So what does that give you? G and C. And you know that G here and C go together also. Now how about your A and D chords? Well, you know that very often you'll play an A here and a D, and they'll go together, A and D. Well, if you play an A up here at the 5th fret in the E position, then there's your D. 1 chord, 4 chord. Now here's a little trick. If this is a 4 chord, then your 5 chord is going to be 2 frets higher, or your E. A, D, E, A. Or I'll play it the other way. A, D, E, A. Just like down here if I was playing it A, D, E, A. Let's try that in G. Here's a G chord. Here's a C chord. And I know that because I know that this is my G and C have that special relationship just like E and A. If I go up 2 more frets, I've got a D and a G. So here's my 1 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, 1 chord. No matter where I am, that relationship stays the same. So if I want to play this up at, let's say, the 6th fret, I don't even have to know what chord this is. I can play 1 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, 1 chord. Happens to be a B flat. So what would make this E flat? G flat. B flat. Let's say I brought it down to the 2nd fret. I'm in F sharp now. So now you can see how these chords work together. Before, if I was playing a G and I wanted to go to a C, I'd have to go all the way up to the 8th fret. If I wanted to get a D, I'd have to go up to the 10th fret. Now, if I want a C from a G chord down here at the 3rd fret, I just stay on the same fret and get to the A position. 2 frets up and I've got my D. So this is the same as this. Now, of course, if you like the sound, if there's a reason you want to be going up to your higher frets, that's one thing. But if you want to save your motion, you don't want to be moving around so much, you can stay right within these few frets, right in this area, and you've got a 1 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, and a 1 chord. Let's take a look at this position again. Just as we got a 7th out of this E position by just lifting up this finger or adding it to here, when you're on the A position, if you lift up this middle finger, now this is sometimes hard, you might want to just switch it around. Now you've got an a 7th position. Just like down here when you were playing A 7th. Now you've got an A position and an A 7th position. But here it's a C and a C 7th, right? A sharp, B, C. C 7th. If you're playing it like this, with this little bar with your 3rd finger, you can use your pinky. Now this is a real stretch, but it's something worth trying. Get your 7th like that. This one's a lot easier, actually. If you want a D 7th, move that up 2 frets. So now you can have a G, G 7th, C 7th, D 7th, G. So you can see how these chords start to work together in patterns. And again, you can play these positions anywhere on the neck. You can go up 6th fret, get these 7ths, 5th fret. And once you start understanding where these chords lie on the neck, you've pretty much conquered the guitar because you know the entire fingerboard just from these few positions.